But here it is. We're blasted off. We're blasted. Boys, girls, MBs. We're live. We're alive. Let the people know. And there's Kaya right there at January 6th, 2021. She was there. South Korea is spicy too. The guy is still resisting the arrest warrants. Oh, yeah, I forgot. There's also South Korea stuff too. The world is not doing all right, ladies and gentlemen. That's all it is. The world is not doing all right. And I'm afraid to tell you that things are most likely going to not get better, but as a matter of fact, most likely get worse. So just gear up for that, okay? Just make sure that you understand that things might not be much better. I thought Kaya was only 2. Were you even pregnant with Kaya back then? Yes. I was pregante. Kaya is about to be 2 this year, so obviously it's a joke. She wasn't at January 6th. Or was she? And I'm lying. Look at how big she is. After all, she simply can't be 2 years old. That would mean that she's still basically a puppy. That's crazy. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever, right? NBA Twitter's been going crazy about the Joy Taylor allegations. What is... Okay, I'll try to dive into that and develop a better understanding. I don't know what it is. You'd look radiant if you were barefoot and pregnant, bro. Isn't Enron supposed to be dropping something big today? Yeah, I don't like that. The Enron stuff is like so obviously a remnant of a old era of like millennial marketing and jokes. I don't know. I think the Enron stuff is like really cringe. I don't even know if it's like a cryptocurrency thing or not, but it's like very obviously a fake marketing thing, you know? Anyway, that's it. It's official. Congress is certifying Donald Trump's election victory. As you guys know, this is not necessarily something that people were aware of that the American government does until the Republicans decided this was a pivotal moment to strike and potentially change the trajectory of American democracy. What is this? Oh no, it's happening again. Just keep this video to bait some views.
To the Capitol, but those police are gone. I don't see anyone. When we were coming up on the other side, from the west side of the Capitol, we saw a van
oh my God.
and a group of National Guardsmen, and they were running into
oh my
the building.
God,
As
they're storming?
The building,
Liberals are storming the Capitol?
Cheering at them, yelling, not to forget
oh my
their
God.
oath, that they made an oath to this country. I mean, really harassing these the National Guardsmen who were running into the building. And so it turned.
Oh my God, they're doing it again. No, I'm just kidding. All right. I was the only protester outside Congress. Where was everyone? Let's be real. Let's keep it a $1.50. Okay? Let's be really real. Liberals are not resisting the Trump administration. They're not. Liberals are too busy, both in the halls of Congress and outside, clapping at the normalization of Donald Trump and the Republican Party, and also simultaneously celebrating how good they are at normalizing people like Trump. Okay, we are. Look at Lindy Lee. I hate libs so much. I mean, Lindy Lee is like one of the sweatiest and grossest operatives out there. So that's not even, she's like uniquely bad. But my point is we're done. It's over. The American Reich is here. Okay, it's, some might say it's always been here. America KKK style. Maoist standard English speakers rejoice. You were right all along. But that's kind of where we're at. That's where we're at. And I mean, look at the liberals celebrating how wonderful they are, celebrating how they preserve these institutions, unlike the silly Republicans. Meanwhile, they're certifying Donald Trump,
Of the House and Senate are gathering in what is there, and there is the Speaker Mike Johnson and Vice President Kamala Harris. It's obviously a bipartisan or even nonpartisan event where the leaders of this country come together to count the electoral votes. There's Ted Cruz, a senator from Texas, who was one of the main individuals who helped cause what happened 4 years ago by putting forward the falsehood that the vice president could somehow do something to stop the electoral count. There's Democratic leader Hakeem Jeffries with Catherine Clark, his number two. What are your thoughts as you watch this in action, Caitlin?
Ted Cruz obviously was the first senator to object. And obviously, just looking back on this, what the vice president maintained at the time, as Mark knows well, is that he did not have the power to block the certification on this day 4 years ago.
And he didn't.
What we have seen is the Electoral Count Act that was passed reaffirming that interpretation of the law. So people like John Eastman, who Pence later referred to as a crackpot of attorneys that Trump was listening to at the time, could not make that argument. But also it changed the threshold for how many people have to object to lead to that moment. So even if we were in the exact same situation as 4 years ago, had this law been passed, the threshold would have had to have been much higher than what it was 4 years ago for that to actually happen.
Let's listen in. Vice President Harris is calling for order.
Pursuant to the Constitution and laws of the United States, the Senate and House of Representatives are meeting in joint session to...
I'll be honest, it does kind of feel like maybe they didn't think Donald Trump was Hitler. This doesn't reflect my opinion on the matter. This doesn't reflect my opinion on the matter. But it kind of feels like they didn't have any issues with Donald Trump's policies, and they certainly didn't have any issues with Donald Trump either. Okay? And they don't have an issue with the Republican Party either. They went from this is not normal to maybe this should be normal, and this way it'll be fine. And for the record, it's really interesting because you see media coverage on Trump's inauguration. And a lot of people in the media are talking about how crazy it is that Google and Facebook and Jeff Bezos, they're all giving millions of dollars to Trump's inauguration funds. And it's not that weird. If the elites have decided this is the way, if the elites have decided that Trump is just the Republican Party, and this is just how the Republicans are, and we just got to play ball with the Republicans, okay, then yeah, it's not newsworthy. Or it wouldn't have been newsworthy in the same way if, companies gave money to the George W. Bush inauguration. To me, it just shows that everyone in America is ready to play ball. All of our elites are ready to play ball. Trump, Teflon Don, he did the dang thing. He did it. He knew that he would face legal scrutiny, chose to fight against it by running for office again, successfully won the election, and now we're in his court. And the Democrats are, I think, totally willing to stand back and stand by. What is this? Jesus Christ, I've been giving money to this man for 29 months. Is today when they certify President Musk? Yes.
Verify the certificates and count the votes of the electors of the several states for President and Vice President of the United States. After ascertainment has been had that the certificates are authentic and correct in form, the tellers will count and make a list of the votes cast by the electors of the several states. The tellers on the part of the two houses will take their places at the clerk's desk.
I just think it's so important to reflect on what we are seeing right now. We talked at the beginning about this complex being...
I want to know what Blue Anon is going to do now. Because I thought Blue Anon was talking about how Mamala is going to stop the steal. So what as the admiral of the Blue Anon Brigades, West Coast Division General, I am at a loss for words here. I'm a little confused. I thought that we were supposed to wait for orders from Kamala Harris. I am the Blue Anon shaman. And as the Blue Anon shaman, I thought this was our opportunity to strike. Mamala was going to not certify. She knew something was up. I thought that the SpaceX had changed out the vote tabulations and that Mamala was going to strike while the iron was hot. What's happening? And as the leader of the West Coast Mamala Brigades, I've decided perhaps that they actually infiltrated Mamala, killed her, put her in a CIA black site because she was fighting against the deep state. And this is a clone. That's right. I think Mamala is a clone. Meanwhile, this is liberal January 6th. A crowd of hundreds, if not 1,000, showed up to Meridian Hill, Malcolm X Park, for today's community snow fight in D.C. There it is. Liberal January 6th is happening. And what's funny is they'll also talk about how, like, sweet it is. Like, they'll talk about how great it is that, like, you know, look at us. We're adults, unlike those Republicans. Remember, and there's truth to that. Yes, liberals will not, you know, throw their hands up and try to resist or do something about the situation. But then they'll also say, look at that. That's actually a virtue. It's actually a virtue that we are not even resisting the Trump administration after we said he was a Nazi. I still think he is, for the record. Only time will show how much of a Nazi he is, but
being fortified, but it's being fortified despite the fact that this is peaceful.
Without objection, the tellers will dispense with reading formal portions of the certificates. After ascertaining that the certificates are regular in form and authentic, the tellers will announce the votes cast by the electors.
A liberal insurrection would have looked very different. We would have escorted the original Broadway cast of Hamilton into the galleries. They would softly sing "History Has Its Eyes on You" as members of the GOP spewed their lies. Yeah, we would do woke gender as well. We would also only tactically snap. Okay, I say we because remember, I am the Blue Anon Brigadier. Okay, we would also snap. No clapping, just snapping. Guava Shaper, thank you for the 10 community gifted subs. Okay. We would do gender. We would do woke gender. Okay. Broadway musical, jazz hands. We would do a land acknowledgement after the insurrection or before the insurrection. Okay. Just remember, we have to do a land acknowledgement first and foremost. We'd have to put marginalized people on a single file line, put them in the front lines, you know, and of course, mandatory drag.
For each state, beginning with Alabama.
Madam President, the certificate of the electoral vote of the state of Alabama seems to be regular in form and authentic, and it appears therefrom that Donald J. Trump
and then the end of the insurrection would be ensuring that we secure enough funds to give to Israel. Another $8 billion to Israel, to be exact, which is what Joe Biden is doing. We would cherish that, and we would celebrate him for doing that.
The state of Florida received 9 votes for president, and J.D. Vance of the state of Ohio received 9 votes for vice president. Madam President, the certificate of the electoral
Basically, what's happening right now,
vote
the
of state of
tellers alternate
California
reporting on the
seems to be
authenticity
regular
and the
I think it's so funny. This is yet another testament to the reality that Donald Trump has dramatically changed American norms, American institutions, American politics, and reshaped it in his own image. Nobody before January 6, 2021 ever cared about January 6th. That was not like a media moment. But because he tried to overthrow American democracy in the funniest way possible, now this is also a unique moment where, see, the American Congress has gotten together to certify the vote counts. It's like, this is just purely symbolic. This is the type of thing that like nobody really cared about. It's just super basic stuff in Congress that happens that you normally are supposed to not even know about. No one needs to know that this is a thing. No one is supposed to watch this in real time.
proper form of each of the certificates and the number of votes designated for president and vice president, and then each teller records the results.
This is no, it's not even PBS material. This is C-SPAN. This gets in the past, this got like 35 views on C-SPAN.
On a paper tally
It does
sheet.
seem boring. It is boring.
And at the end of that,
look at them.
reading all results.
They're describing the process of vote certification. Like what? Of course it's boring. It's so stupid. It's like putting a camera. It's like putting a camera in front of a guy who's just like literally rubber stamping stuff at the FDA every day or something. Like it's just like what? It is incredibly boring procedural stuff. And I think part of the reason why we're hyper focusing on this is to basically repeat a lie that things are normal. Okay? That's it. Things are not normal. And things are not normal. But everyone, the fourth estate, is desperately trying to be like, no. I promise you things are normal. Look at how normal this bureaucratic process is. Everything is fine. Please don't freak out. Meanwhile, Justin Trudeau, in America's hat, Canada, resigned. Part of the reason why he resigned is because he was deeply unpopular, okay? Part of the reason why he was deeply unpopular played a role in the same struggles that Americans are facing as well, where a lot of people have decided that immigrants are the reason why the housing market is out of control. People will point to the carbon tax, or the taxing initiatives that he engaged in for green energy, even though it's an objectively conservative way of trying to tackle climate change. America's other ally, South Korea, experienced a martial law initiative. The president was deposed, and now they're going after him, but they can't even issue an arrest warrant because he's protecting himself with his own Secret Service. America's not saying anything about that either because it's weird. You have war everywhere. The things are just not normal. Things are not normal at all. And it seems like leadership at the helm is more invested in maintaining neoliberalism as the maintaining neoliberalism as the way to go, this like ideological zealotry, rather than try to actually fix some of these problems. And people are getting more and more frustrated, and right-wingers are just winning. They're winning all over. They're winning all over the world, where people have not changed. People have not changed their politics at all on the opposing side to fascism. If you have liberals running the show, you're in a really terrible predicament. All the while, we just hyper focus on silly things like this to be like, no, everything is fine, everything is good. Meanwhile, what is Trump doing? While this is happening, Trump is, on the other hand, consistently saying, oh, we're just going to annex Canada. Now, I think he's joking about that. I don't think he's being serious about that. But I do think it's dangerous and nefarious when he talks about invading Mexico or bombing the cartels. I do think that that is something that he might do. I don't think he's joking about that. But as it stands, I fear as though we will just keep looking at things like this to be like, no, everything is fine. Everything is normal.
From all 50 states and D.C., the tellers then compare the results on their 4 tally sheets and all sign all 4 tally sheets. Then the vice president announces the result totals and announces the election of president and vice president. So they are going to be reading through each 50 state and the District of Columbia.
Madam
Results
President,
from Ohio there, obviously the state for J.D. Vance. Back with the team here in New York as we continue to watch what is going on to the counting of the ballot from each of the states. Congressman, you were there 4 years ago. Is it odd watching this?
It is. Well, the funny thing is, we were kind of talking offline here. I was present for 12, 16, and then 20, obviously that thing. And usually, this is a non-event. I would go, kind of show up, they'd open the session, half the time I'd go back to my office because you don't even need to be on the floor. And this is over in an hour. And that's how it should be. This is great that it's happening this way. But for me, it's surreal because my attention on what January 6th is obviously has been colored by what January 6th was 4 years ago, that I forgot how quick this actually happens and how really perfunctory it actually is. So this is a good thing today. Again, the new incoming president will make the decision whether he wants to move on from January 6th or not. I'm fine whatever he decides. I think the country would be better off if he did. But yeah, it's good to see this happen today.
Do you think January 6th, years from now, is a date that will live in infamy?
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah. January 6th is at this point, I think it's 100 9/11s, I think. Worse than 9/11 times 100. Obviously, no one cares about January 6th. Who cares? Let the man overthrow the government in peace. Leave him alone. He is doing that right now, by the way. Ironically enough, he is kind of doing that. So if your argument against Donald Trump is that he destroys institutions because you're a norms respecter and institution defender, then yeah, you're very frustrated about January 6, 2021, and you're not frustrated about January 6, 2025. That's the point. This is exactly what I'm trying to explain to you, okay? Liberals don't like January 6, 2021 because that destroys institutional norms, because they only care about preserving institutional norms. They don't care about losing to Donald Trump gracefully, graciously, and, falling on the sword like this. That's it.
Use the phrase used for other events. I'm not comparing it at all to
I think we live in split screen America. I think for some of the country it will, and it'll be remembered. I think otherwise it'll fall to the history books. And the reality is this, most of the country did care. It rubbed them the wrong way. They didn't like it. That showed up consistently in polling, but it just didn't rank in the top issues at the end of the day. And I think this was such a historic and wild election cycle, and so many other dynamics entered the last 4 years that in many ways the events of January 6th were eclipsed. And there's a certain privilege involved. I acknowledge it with myself in being able to say, well, I'm a voter against January 6th. I'm voting this way because that day crossed the boundaries for me. But if you feel like the cost of living is too high, the border hasn't been secure, groceries cost too much, and you think that a different candidate, you think Donald Trump's better on that, then
you know that January 6th is what caused Putin to invade Ukraine, right? It also gave Netanyahu the permission structure to do Israeli expansion on Gaza. So yeah, it easily, and now Lebanon and now Syria. So yeah, it's easily worse than 9/11. What? What? Yeah, that's what happened. Oh my God.
That's who you're going to vote for. And
Okay, I think we've seen enough. Okay, we've seen enough.
The peaceful.
Yeah, breaking news. Kamala Harris announces she will oversee the certification of the 2024 election. And she's going to do it. She's going to do it gracefully.
Transfer of power is one of the most fundamental principles of American democracy. As much as any other principle, it is what distinguishes our system of government from monarchy or tyranny.
Yeah, breaking news. Elected official is going to do her job. Yeah. Breaking news. Breaking news. Tomorrow, Kamala Harris is also going to sign off, She's still going to continue overseeing the Senate. Breaking news. As the vice president, this is her duty. Breaking news. On January 20th, they will hand over the reins of the government to Donald Trump's administration. Breaking news. Yeah, I know. This is how it is. This is how it goes.
Today at the United States Capitol, I will perform my constitutional duty as Vice President of the United States to certify the results of the 2024 election. This duty is a sacred obligation, one I will uphold, guided by love of country, loyalty to our Constitution, and my unwavering faith in the American people. As we have seen, our democracy can be fragile, and it is up to then each one of us.
This kind of attitude is so funny because they make it seem as though the Republicans, if given the opportunity, wouldn't do a million January 6s over and over again. Hey, we're leading by example. See, this is how you really do it. And if you're engaging in this pageantry of a normal piece of the process, normal bureaucracy, as though this is a valuable lesson to instill upon the American public, make no mistake, they do not care. Your enemies do not care. Well, I guess your Republicans aren't really her enemies, if we're being real, or the Democratic Party's enemies, but they are the enemy of the American people. I'm just going to repeat this over and over again in perpetuity. Institution respecters and norm defenders, when they lose to the Republican Party, end up also failing on both fronts because the Republicans will never defend the institutions or the norms. They only care about getting their way.
To stand up for our most cherished principles and to make sure that in America, our government always remains of the people, by the people, and for the people. May God bless you, and may God bless the United States of America.
That's right. Oh, my God. You are grossly underestimating Kamala 2028. I am telling you right now, Kamala Harris's political career is done. Okay? It is done. It is Jover. Oh, HasanAbi had in the news. His dad is in prison for January 6 crimes. He doesn't want Trump to pardon him. Oh, my God. Repping the merch and everything. That's crazy. All right. Let's take a look.
If Trump pardons your dad, what's your biggest fear?
Just getting shot in the street. I don't know.
By your father?
By my father, by someone he knows. There's a bunch of people that I don't know, and I don't know their intent. So, you want to help me lift this?
Sure. This is Jackson Reffitt. Do you want me to take this end here, or how do we do this?
Yes, please.
He's moving out of his home here in Texas, he says, for his own safety.
Bought a gun because I got so paranoid, and moving out because I'm scared.
Do you know how to fire a gun?
Yeah, I've been shooting it.
Do you have it on you right now?
Yeah, I have to wear it around the house kind of often just to get used to how it feels.
Okay.
But I'm part of that,
Jackson's dad is Guy Reffitt, who was a member of the Texas 3%er militia.
And I just kept going, go forward! Go forward! I couldn't even see, bro.
He's serving a more than 7-year sentence for his role in the January 6th Capitol attack. Reffitt was convicted of 5 felonies, including carrying a firearm on Capitol grounds. So you reported your dad to the FBI?
Yes.
That's what got him arrested, basically.
More or less, yeah.
Oh,
what
God.
effect has that had on your family?
I'm actually worried, man. I'm actually worried. I'm worried. Can you explain the difference between you and a norm defender? I don't care about norms. I don't care about institutions. I care about people. I care about preserving. I care about protecting people. I care about doing right by others. Okay? I'll give you one immediate example. The Senate parliamentarian refused to add the increasing of the minimum wage to $15 at the federal level to a budget reconciliation bill. That was a must-pass bill that was going to pass with 51 votes, which the Democrats had at the time. Now, the Senate parliamentarian is a position that technically has the power under our norms and institutions to say, well, this can't be a part of budget reconciliation because it's actually not going to touch the deficit, right? That's real. That's a thing that they have. It's not an elected position, however. It's an appointed position. What that means is you can actually fire that person and put into that position a person who will play ball. Now, the reason why I know that that is the case is because the Republicans have done that in the past. The Republican Party under Dick Cheney's leadership did exactly that. They fired a Senate parliamentarian and put a new person there. The Democrats, on the other hand, go, oh, we care about our institutions. We care about the norms. So we have to take out the $15 minimum wage. There's nothing we can do. Okay? It's ridiculous. You're only doing that as a part of the Democratic Party leadership structure because you don't want $15 minimum wage. You don't want to have that battle. You don't want to whip those votes within your own caucus. And you don't really necessarily care. Okay? It would have technically been considered. A violation of the norms, right? If they were to fire that person, or at least tell that person that they're going to fire that person if they don't play ball. But ultimately, I don't care. What I care about, on the other hand, I don't care about the norms. I don't care about the institutions. I care about, protecting people. I care about putting people first. Anyway, going back to this, this is truly terrifying. I'll be honest.
It's destroyed it.
Was there a moment where you thought, I know my dad's done all this stuff, but I don't want to report him?
Yeah. I still feel horrible, of course. Like, I can't get over it, but I don't regret it.
When was the last time you spoke to your dad?
5 months ago. It was the first time I talked to him. And it was just a crying fest for the first 10 minutes, and that was great. And then I brought up the fact that I'm worried about him getting out. And he was almost puzzled, like he was confused as to why I thought that.
Are you overreacting?
No, I get death threats daily, hourly at this point.
Unbeknownst to us, it was our 18-year-old son who turned his dad in to the FBI.
Why?
My son is a declared Democratic Socialist.
Jackson's
They've like abandoned this person. You know what I mean? They're just like, yeah, he's an enemy. He's an enemy of the state. He's an enemy of our beautiful president, Donald Trump. That is not good. That is definitely insane. Imagine having your parents put a crosshair on your back like that in a room full of people who are just out of their minds.
Mom, Nicole.
The party of family values, dude. Crazy.
Has become one of the most prominent people campaigning for the release of people serving time for January 6th.
We lift up each and every one of our J6ers, Father.
You've been coming here for hundreds of nights.
Almost 900.
Why?
After I saw what happened to my husband, I could not sit on my hands at home anymore.
Christopher Alba.
Oof, no wonder, dude, no wonder. No wonder he's moving. Look at this. Imagine this being your mom. That's crazy. There are some chatters whose moms are like this, but even then, they're not like, I don't think they put a target on your back, right? This is This is brainworms, man. This is so be nice, question mark. What are you talking about? Be nice. What are you talking about? If your mom, Chuck Dilly, okay, sat in a room full of like 3%ers and Proud Boys at a gathering and went, Chuck Dilly is an enemy of our cause, our movement, okay, in perhaps one of the most like heavily armed and radicalized groups that you can talk to, declare you to be an enemy, I would protect you as well against your parents. I would still love her. Okay, well, I don't think that is reciprocated, it seems.
Nicole left Texas and moved to Washington, D.C., where she takes part in a nightly vigil held here outside the city's jail.
Marcus Malley.
Do you wish Guy didn't come here on January 6th?
No, I'm glad he stood up for something.
Every night, January 6 prisoners from around the country call into the vigil.
Continue holding the line, this thing's almost done.
Including Guy Reffitt, who recently called in to wish Nicole a happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Sorry I couldn't get you something better than 80 months, but you know, they're ass.
Are you confident that Trump will let your husband walk free?
I feel like Trump is a man of his word.
What's the next step for your family?
To continue to fight.
Together.
Nicole is sometimes joined in D.C. by her two daughters, Jackson's sisters, who've been caught in the middle of a divided family.
Is not shown in my father. We have nothing against Jackson. Jackson's my brother. I love him. I love him no more than I love my father. I love my father. I love my family.
From the beginning, the girls and I have received hundreds.
I don't think she's happy that her son stood up for something. I think she's very upset that her son stood up for something. She's happy that the dad stood up for Donald Trump because I think she loves Donald Trump more than she loves many things. But, I mean, you can kind of tell when someone is bricked up here a little bit. If they're, I mean, at this point, like if you got like a little Jesus wagon thing going on with like a megaphone where you kind of carry that around everywhere, it's just like you need like a factory reset or something.
Hundreds of mailed death threats. I'm not talking about online things. I'm talking about rape to my daughters, death to my husband, death to me.
You don't think Jackson has to be afraid of his dad?
No.
Yeah.
I think that's been put on the record several times.
So why is Jackson still afraid?
I just think that it's the same thing where people think this red hat on my head is scary and dangerous. It's that same mentality. Jackson comes from a lot of love, and there's a lot of love left to be given. And justice for all.
I mean, I love my mom, of course. I love her.
Do you love your dad?
Of course I love my dad. I love my dad, but I can't feel safe around him. I hate having to put myself in this situation to feel some sort of comfort after the election and what's going to happen when my dad gets pardoned, when all these hundreds of people get pardoned, and all these thousands of people get validated for their actions. And I'm one of those people that they call a traitor. And my dad once said traitors get shot. So that's been ringing in my head for years and years and years.
In a message from prison, Guy Reffitt said that Jackson has never had anything to worry about from me, and he will never have anything to worry about from me ever. If your dad's watching this, what's your message?
I don't think, dude, I don't think you're, I mean, look, I can't know your personal experience, Chatter. I don't know if you're in here or not, but I don't think you have to worry about your dad. I think it's more so, other people that are in that community that you might have to worry about.
Message to him.
That I love him and that I hope he gets better. And I hope I get better too. I hope I grow out of this paranoia right now. And that I really thought what I did was right. I thought I did what I did to protect him and my family and the people around him and the people he could have hurt.
Let's talk about January 6th. I am interested in your kind of reflections on where we've come to. You know, we've been playing images from that day in 2021 and talking about it through the morning. Obviously now Donald Trump's election set to be certified. He'll then.
I think that we are going to see more of this like militia stuff. We're going to see more militia mobilizations happening under the Trump administration. especially considering that a lot of the militia movements historically, whether it be the Klan, have always operated in this weird space where they both have members within the Klan that are prominent members within the legal structure, whether it be judges or cops, right? But I think now we are, especially under the first Trump administration, that grew a lot in size and prominence. And under the second Trump administration, you are going to see the lines, the supposed quote unquote distinction between our legal structure, our police force, our military, our National Guard, and these sorts of militia movements merge a little bit more. I think those lines there's never really been like a hard boundary between the two, especially historically. But I think that we're completely going to cast aside what remained of this aesthetic boundary between the Proud Boys and the 3%ers and these kinds of like white nationalist, far-right militias and, Republican local officials all the way up to federal officials as well. This is perhaps the greatest example of what I'm talking about. ProPublica reported by Joshua Kaplan reported about a guy who went and intercepted the militia movement. Okay, John Williams. He went in and joined the ranks of the Oath Keepers. Okay. And it's really interesting because he didn't do this in unison with the federal agents. He didn't do this in collaboration with police officers. He didn't even do this. He did this seemingly on his own. He was like, I want to investigate what is going on here. And then after the fact, he turned around and gave all of this information to ProPublica reporters. For years, he carefully monitored the activity and found out something that we kind of knew already, which we had talked about before, especially with respect to the Proud Boys in Portland, for example, that these guys are directly in contact and sometimes directly working with members of law enforcement. Shocking. I'll give you some of the highlights. A freelance vigilante, a wilderness survival trainer, spent years undercover climbing the ranks of right-wing militias. He didn't tell the police or the FBI. He didn't tell his family or friends. He penetrated a new generation of militia leaders, which included doctors and government attorneys. Experts say that militias could have a renaissance under Donald Trump. He sent ProPublica a massive trove of documents and conversations he secretly recorded give a unique, startling window into the militia movement. On April 1st, 2023, Williams retrieved the bag from his closet and rushed to his car. He had no time to clean the dishes that he accumulated in his apartment. He did not know if armed men were out looking for him. He did not know if he would ever feel safe to return. He parked his car for the night in the foothills overlooking Salt Lake City and curled up his 6'4" frame in the back seat of a 20-year-old Honda. This was his new home. He turned on a recording app to add an entry to his diary. His voice started high-pitched rasp of a lifelong smoker. Where to start, he sighed, taking a deep breath. After more than 2 years undercover, he'd been growing rash and impulsive. He had feared someone was in danger and tried to warn him, but it backfired. Williams was sure that at least one person knew he was a double agent now, he said into his phone. It's only a matter of time before it gets back to the rest. In the daylight, Williams dropped an envelope with no return address in a U.S. Postal Service mailbox. He'd loaded it with a flash drive and a gold Oath Keepers medallion. It was addressed to me. The documents laid out a remarkable odyssey. Posing as an ideological compatriot, Williams had penetrated the top ranks of two of the most prominent right-wing militias in the country. He'd slept in the home of a man who claims to be the new head of the Oath Keepers, rifling through his files in the middle of the night. He'd devised elaborate ruses to gather evidence of malicious ties to high-ranking law enforcement officials. He'd uncovered secret operations like the surveillance of a young journalist, then improvised ways to sabotage the militants' schemes. In one group, his ploys were so successful that he became the militia's top commander in the state of Utah. Now, he was a fugitive. He drove south towards a desert 4 hours from the city where he could disappear. That's right. Now, what's really interesting about this story is, once again, this was not a federal law enforcement operation. It wasn't an infiltration by a Fed. It was just a dude who just went undercover because he personally was like, what's going on with these militias? What's happening here? He saw January 6, 2021. He saw the militia movements and their and how prominently they were a part of January 6, 2021. And he was like, I'm going to go and join these militias. I'm going to go and detail what they're doing. Hey, come on now, be fair. There are tons of cops that are currently infiltrating these militias. Yeah, the problem is the cops that are all over these militias are actually just, ideological sympathizers. I'm sure that there are some federal law enforcement officers involved in these militia movements, not because of their ideological allegiance to the militia movements, but, overall, yeah, I know you're joking, chatter. I know. I'm not missing the joke, chat. Calm down. Many of those that carry the badge are also fellow travelers. So, the Capitol riot had been nagging at me too. I'd reported extensively on January 6th. I sat with families who blamed the militias for snatching their loved ones away from them, pulling them into a life of secret meetings and violent plots, or into a jail cell. By the time Williams contacted me through most of the most infamous groups appeared to have largely gone dark. Were militias more enduring, more potent than it seemed? Some of what he told me seemed significant. Still, before the package arrived, it could feel like I was corresponding with a shadow. I knew Williams treated deception as an art form. When you spin a lie, he once told me, you have to have things they can verify so they won't think to ask questions. While stories generally seem precise and sober, always reassuring for a journalist, I needed to proceed with extreme skepticism. The files that were sent over to ProPublica give a unique window at the once expansive and intimate into one of the most consequential and volatile social movements of our time. Williams penetrated a new generation of paramilitary leaders, which included doctors, career cops, and government attorneys. Sometimes they were frightening, sometimes bumbling, always heavily armed. It was a world where a man would propose assassinating politicians only to spark a debate about logistics. Federal prosecutors have convicted more than 1,000 people for their role in January 6th. Key militia captains were sent to prison for a decade or more, but that did not quash the allure that militias hold for a broad swath of Americans. Why would it? After all, Donald Trump initially criticized them, but then turned around and said that they were political prisoners for doing the right thing. Obviously, if the most impactful figure who just won his reelection says that these guys are political prisoners, of course they're going to get away with it. Here, I'll give you one example, okay? We joke about January 6th is funny. A cop died of a stroke the day after, okay? And the suspicion is that the wounds that he got during January 6th from a guy who was beating his ass is responsible for the stroke. That guy's in prison for 6 years, okay? And Donald Trump is most likely going to pardon him. Now, there is no world in which, even if a person punches a cop repeatedly or hits a cop with a blunt object repeatedly, okay, and they die to a stroke the day after, okay, they die to a stroke the day after. There is no world in which they only get 6 years. Even if you used a blunt object to beat a cop, okay, and nothing happened to the cop, there is still no world in which you only get 6 years. Okay, that's like assault of a peace officer with a deadly weapon. Are you kidding me? There's just no world. That is not a real circumstance. The only way this happens is if you're doing this while you are participating in an insurrection for the president. Okay, for the current president who just won his reelection. That's it. Anyway, that cop died a week later in the hospital. My point is, even if nothing happened to the cop, let alone like the cop died or whatever, even if you just, do you think there is a world where the average American can just use an object to bludgeon a police officer, okay, and then get out in 2 years? There are instances where it's valid and warranted, where you are engaging in self-defense, okay, against a police officer who is out of line and abusing their position. Those people do not get this level of leniency from, those people never experience this level of leniency. I'm simply stating that it is crazy. It is crazy that this level of leniency only exists for Republicans, right-wingers that participated in an insurrection. Mishma, thank you for the 25 gifted subs. W Gifter. Now, President-elect Donald Trump has promised to pardon January 6 rioters when he returns to the White House. Experts warn that such a move could trigger a renaissance for militant extremists, sending them an unprecedented message of protection and support and making it all more urgent to understand them. Unless otherwise noted, none of the militia members mentioned in the story responded to requests for comment. Williams is part of a larger Cold War, radical versus radical, that stayed mostly in the shadows. A left-wing activist told me he personally knows about 30 people who've gone undercover in militias or white supremacist groups. They did not coordinate with law enforcement, instead taking the surveillance of one of the most intractable features of American politics into their own hands. I think part of the reason why people do this also is because they just don't trust the federal law enforcement officers. Like this person very clearly does not trust the feds. Okay, which is understandable, because he's like, I went into the militia movement and I found out that there are, like federal attorneys that are a part of it, people who collaborate with the feds, people who are a part of the criminal justice system, prominent members who are also a part of the militia movement. Skeptical of authorities, militias have sought to reshape the country through armed action. Williams sought to do it through betrayal and lies, which sat with him uneasily. I could have been successful at this if I wasn't one of them in some respects, he once told me. I couldn't have done it so long unless they recognized something in me. If there's one moment that set Williams on his path into the militia underground, it came roughly a decade before January 6th, when he was sent to a medium security prison. He was early in his 20s, drawn to danger and filled with an inner turbulence. I guess he has the background. My mom was one of the founders of the Utah Citizens Armed Militia, which was organized to keep the peace at BLM protests. These militias are strange because they back the police, but they also don't think that the police are bad enough at their jobs that they have to step in. Yeah. Yeah, they also will, obviously, like with January 6th, fight back against the police as well. And we'll be shocked every step of the way that the police are not collaborating with them, partially because, like, in their hometowns, the police are definitely collaborating with them. And additionally shocked when, federal law enforcement or the criminal justice system ends up turning on them for doing direct, clear-cut violations of the law. But anyway, before we continue with this, let's take a look at what Funny Hat Man has to say about the January 6th committee members.
And stand on the Capitol steps and be inaugurated on January 20th. When you think about that arc of history, what goes through your mind, and how do you think we ended up here?
Well, I'll tell you what goes through my mind is 2000, the 2000 election with George W. Bush and Al Gore, when an election was decided by less than 1,000 votes, 450 something votes. And we had a peaceful transfer of power then. When I mean, imagine if an election today were really down to that number of votes. And so people like Al Gore and others, upheld the Constitution. And we saw, so I'm really struck by the notion that Kamala Harris will be, serving in that position that Mike Pence did, and upheld the Constitution. And so, it's a marked reminder of how important this peaceful transfer of power is. We've had it through history. I saw it in 2000. We're seeing it today, but we didn't see it 4 years ago. And so, I hope that this will just remind everybody, that this is how it's supposed to work.
One of the things we've heard, Mark, from Donald Trump is that he plans to pardon some of the people who were at the Capitol that day. Let's listen to what he said about this in December. Take a look.
You promised to pardon those who attacked the Capitol on January 6th. Are you still vowing to follow through with that promise?
We're looking at it right now, most likely, yeah. These people are living in hell.
Let me just...
And I think it's very unfair.
But
most likely, I'll do it very quickly. I'm going to be acting very quickly.
Within your first 100 days, first day?
First day.
First day, he says. Mark, what do you think the politics of this are for him? I mean, there are a range of offenses, right, that people were charged with and convicted of or pled guilty to, from violence to trespassing. If Donald Trump goes through with
Trump's like, our prison is obsolete, I'm telling you.
This, is he going to pay a political price? Will Republicans pay a political price?
Listen, I think he's going to try a hybrid. The politics are fraught both ways. I mean, his base, believes him when he said that he's going to do the pardon, so he's got to make good on that promise. On the other hand, it's only going to drag up those violent images of people attacking police, Casey. And so I think what's going to happen is he's going to find the lesser offenders, pardon those people, and the people who, where there was clear evidence of attacking or assaulting officers at the Capitol would be a whole different story, I believe.
Yeah. Mark, the other, of course, aspect of this is those who then went on to investigate what happened that day, the January 6th committee. Trump has also talked about what he wants to do there, or what those people deserve. Let's watch what he said about that.
Everybody on that committee, for what they did, honestly, they should go to jail. I think everybody, anybody that voted in favor.
Are you going to direct your FBI director and your attorney general to send them to jail?
No, not at all. I think that they'll have to look at that.
So what about this particular piece of it? If he moves forward.
He's like, he's like, American prisons are ruthless. They're brutal. We must release our political prisoners. Also, all of our political enemies must rot in prison. They must get locked up. We must throw them under the jail. We must do everything we can in our power to make sure they are punished and tortured under that very same structure that's currently torturing our beautiful, brave American patriots.
With some of the things he suggested that he wants to.
Yeah, Trump is an Angela Davis consumer enjoyer appreciator when it comes to hogs. He's a prison abolitionist for hogs only.
What does that mean for the country? And what is the political impact? Two different things, I would say.
Yeah, well, this is, Casey, this is where I don't think he'll be able to resist his impulse. He wants to punish his opponents and his enemies, including and especially people like Liz Cheney. And this is something
I will say, controversial of me, but I don't care if Liz Cheney goes to jail. I don't care. I think it's good. I think it's funny and good. I'm on board.
Where the Constitution is very clear, but this is also something where people like Kash Patel are being appointed because Donald Trump thinks that's what they're going to do. Remember, he said, "I am your retribution, so stand by." But that's what I expect to see happen on that front.
I was up here, one of those officers up there. I was armed with a rifle that day, so I didn't want to go down in the crowd and potentially have it used or taken. Well, if these are the people that are going to be getting pardons, can you look at this and just say they deserve one? I don't see how.
But President-elect Donald Trump has indicated that he might do just that.
First day.
Yeah, I'm looking first day.
Issue these pardons.
These people have been there, how long is it, 3 or 4 years?
Okay.
Pardons are one of the president's greatest powers, but also biggest.
But dude, in what world does Liz Cheney go to jail and the federal government doesn't also send you to jail? Wait, what? What do you mean? First of all, I don't think Liz Cheney is going to jail. Okay, there's no serious like what is she going to jail for? They've not really mentioned what would be the reason for why she would be thrown in jail. I guess what the chatter is trying to say here, no. What the chatter is trying to say here is that, like, if someone is getting locked up, like Liz Cheney is getting locked up for no real discernible reason, then I am a larger enemy of the state than Liz Cheney in the eyes of the Republican Party. But I think that I have no motion in comparison to, like, these guys who are really tapped into mainstream media and DC circles. So for them, they do see Liz Cheney as a serious enemy or just a nuisance in general. Whereas I am a Twitch streamer and they don't really think about me at all. They don't know who I am, which is good. I want to keep it that way. Let's keep it that way. He didn't even send Hillary to jail. Crazy to think he would somehow be motivated to do that to Liz Cheney. Yeah. So just understand that there's a reason why I am a low-level offender. I do think. Do you think there's a serious threat of you getting arrested? No, I do not. I do not think that there's. I mean, only time will tell. But so far, no, I do not think that there is a serious threat of me getting arrested. I have not violated any laws. Not that that really matters, but we shall see. But I don't think so. I don't think that there is anything that I'm a Twitch streamer, guys. And there is not, it's easier to send goons after regular civilians. It's silly to think they will just go after Instagram influencers or YouTubers, etc. Yeah. Until President Rishi Torres is elected, yeah, at that point, I'm dead. I'm dead. I'm getting executed by firing squad.
I guess political liabilities.
And that's what they are, as hostages. They've been treated terribly.
He created expectations, created a movement of people, created a mob that acted, and then walked away. I hope he doesn't walk away from these promises.
Here's what Trump would have to do to carry out those promises and what it means for the people involved in the January 6th attack.
So I still served at the Capitol for 3 years after the insurrection. I left to run for Congress in a fight to continue to hold Donald Trump accountable. When I was unsuccessful, I became a surrogate for first Joe Biden and then switching over to Kamala Harris. Well, I think that anybody who had anything to do with the incidents of that day need to be held accountable.
Of the nearly 1,600 January 6th defendants, all have been charged with some form of trespassing or disorderly conduct, and more than a third have been charged with crimes involving assaulting, resisting, or obstructing law enforcement.
What we went through that day wasn't normal, and we shouldn't normalize it.
A spokeswoman for Trump's transition team said in a statement to the Wall Street Journal that Trump will pardon Americans who were denied due process and unfairly prosecuted by the weaponized Department of Justice.
I know the system. The system's a very corrupt system.
She also said in a separate statement that pardons will happen on
It's always funny when these guys will talk about how, like, the criminal justice system is evil and corrupt and totally messed up. And I agree, except they say it's only corrupt and messed up for, like, upper middle class white people, jet ski dealership owners who happen to be pro Donald Trump, who also did violate, like, a bunch of laws. It's only corrupt against them, the people that are the most protected under our institutions. Okay, it's hilarious. Yeah, it's so messed up. they're coming after our big beautiful auto dealership owners and their fail sons for the crime of being MAGA. It's the actual corruption within these institutions, or the actual evil within these institutions, is very good. Very, very good. The norm should happen more frequently. Perhaps not even going hard enough on marginalized people. Then how do you explain the deep state indicting the greatest president of the United States? Exactly. That's right. If anyone's getting jailed for being an enemy of the state, is Trump. Even now, they're trying to throw him under the jail. Who? What do you mean? They're dropping everything at this point. Like, at most, he's gonna get a slap on the wrist for like mismanagement and you know, doing the hush money scheme where he lied to the New York authorities about where he was, where the money was actually going to, and that's it. The person that obviously actually spent time in prison for that was his lawyer, Michael Cohen. Everything in the system is designed in a way where, like, yeah, your soldiers will go to jail. You will never go to jail.
On a case-by-case basis, but didn't give any details on who might receive them or when. A number of people accused in the attack are already lobbying the president-elect for pardons. One is Joseph Biggs, a leader of the far-right group The Proud Boys, which played a central role in the Capitol riot. He can be seen at the Capitol in footage from that day.
Hey, we're on the concrete.
These guys are real freaks too. Like, it's crazy. Oh my God. Some of these guys are real freaks. Like, look, I don't know about every single person that participated in January 6th. Like, there's 1,000 of them. I'm sure some of them are low-level offenders, and they probably do have a capacity to reoffend, if we're being real. But like, some of these hogs are very bad. Okay, like, people that were really bad in their own local, in their own localities, notorious. Biggs is one of those guys, right? Long rap sheet in general, even if there isn't priors. But Biggs does have priors as well, if I'm not mistaken. But also, they are responsible for a lot of instability and a lot of violence and a lot of demonstrations. Nancy is doing well. We're so cooked, dude. The gerontocracy. The gerontocracy will save us. Save us, Nancy.
The east side of the Capitol front steps.
Biggs was found guilty of seditious conspiracy, along with several other charges. Court records state that he and other group members helped recruit and lead a crowd that breached the Capitol. Biggs is currently serving a 17-year sentence.
Biggs, what you gotta say?
Look at that shirt. He says, "Register communists, not firearms." Being this angry at communists has to be a mental illness in America. You know what I mean? Like, what valid communist movement even exists in the United States of America? Okay, like, you're angry at shadows. Okay, where are the communists? Where are they in 2024, in 2023, in 2022, in 2021? Where are they? In his mind, he thinks Nancy Pelosi is a communist, obviously. So it's like they're ACP. Come on, guys, be serious.
Dear Mr. President,
His lawyer, Norm Pattis, sent Trump a letter a week after the election.
you are now in a position to close a painful chapter in American history. On behalf of Joe Biggs,
This is the exact type of attorney that I would expect to take on a important political a case such as this one can only be taken on by a lawyer that looks exactly like them.
I am urging you to do so by granting Mr. Biggs' request for a complete pardon for his actions that day. I've heard all sorts of hand-wringing about January 6th. You know, I mean, prosecutors, judges referring to it as an attack on the citadel of democracy. But January 6th wasn't an incendiary event. It was one afternoon's riot. There were some injuries. There was a little bit of property damage. There was the national pride. Our national pride was wounded, and the peaceful transition of power was imperiled for an hour or two. And for this, we're going to fill the prisons.
The prosecutions have necessarily focused on the actions of the individuals charged, not the collective harm done by the thousands of people who were simultaneously committing crimes that day.
The idea behind a pardon is that the criminal justice system sometimes gets it wrong and can be quite harsh, and there needs to be a fail-safe mechanism to ensure injustices are addressed.
Kim Whaley is a law professor who wrote a book on the history of pardon power. She says the modern pardon process usually works like this.
There is, within the Department of Justice, an Office of the Pardon Attorney. Someone who is seeking a pardon or commutation fills out.
Look, deterrence does have a capacity to work if it is done against people who previously thought that they were infallible and devoid of any sort of scrutiny from the legal structures. And January 6th deterrence from the federal law enforcement agencies absolutely worked. That is why it eviscerated the mass mobilization that you saw under the Trump administration. And it's not just deterrence from law enforcement. Deterrence from popular mobilization of anti-fascist movements also is significant and also works as well. The greatest example I can give you under the Trump administration was Unite the Right Rally 1 versus Unite the Right Rally 2. The first Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville ended up with the death of Heather Heyer. Famously, a neo-Nazi traveled all the way, I believe, from Ohio to Charlottesville and drove into a crowd of anti-fascist counter-protesters against these Nazis, and he went to prison. But the real reason as to why Charlottesville 2 was marginal, was tiny, was minuscule, was because of the dedicated efforts of people taking matters into their own hands in terms of unmasking Nazis, in terms of engaging in mass mobilization against the growing Nazi movement. So that actually is the real reason why Unite the Right Rally 2 got very few protesters to go out, like very few Nazis to go out and just be like, yeah, we're still Nazis, we're still here. Okay? So that's real. Those are two real ways in which you can actually push back against these sorts of movements. What the F is this bozo? Would he also agree to letting 90% of criminals free? Stealing only takes a couple of minutes, so stealing deserves no jail time. Murder is only a little damage, so it generally takes no more than a minute, so they shouldn't be held accountable. He knows he's playing devil's advocate. I can't imagine a lawyer be so delusional. I mean, it depends. But anyway, my point is this. Okay? He's responding to the chatter is responding to the lawyer who is just like undermining the severity of this insurrection or whatever. But deterrence in this circumstance was very successful. Law enforcement deterrence in terms of like actual legal punishments that were dished out to people who previously thought that they would never, ever withstand legal scrutiny, which is precisely the reason why during January 6th, they were filming themselves, openly identifying themselves, saying their names. There was a famous case of the West Virginia state member of the state legislature from West Virginia, Derek Evans, openly on live stream saying, Derek Evans is in the Capitol. I repeat, Derek Evans is in the Capitol. Openly saying his name, referring to himself in the third person on camera. These people then turned around and gave interviews. The reason why they did that without masking themselves, without protecting their identity, is because what they thought was just. They thought their cause was just, partially because they were, egged on by Donald Trump and many other prominent members of the Republican Party into engaging in this act. And also, they are not used to getting any sort of real consequences from law enforcement. They're not. They collaborate with law enforcement. Okay? So when the reality doesn't match their expectations, all of a sudden they have to start really reconsidering their choices when they go, I don't know if I want to join this kind of uprising again because I might go to jail. And a lot of these people have a lot to lose as well. It's not like they're pushed into a corner. These are HVAC business owners. These are people, these are real POCs, okay? Or POPs, people of privilege, people of capital, POMs, people of means, okay? So in that same vein, I think Donald Trump openly saying he's going to pardon these people and claiming that these people are actually heroes will have the exact opposite effect. It will galvanize people like this to mobilize again. It will embolden them, okay? It will remind them that, no, the law enforcement agencies are on their side. And I fear that that is precisely what's going to happen. I fear that Donald Trump's actions, such as pardoning these people, is going to end up causing them to feel like they were martyrs and they did the right thing and that the president is on their side and that they will want to do it again. Perhaps this time with, more mobilization. Perhaps this time with, direct, with a more consequential, like something that they will do will be more consequential than even January 6th. Better hardware, better mobilization. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
The form, it has a bunch of criteria that include acceptance of responsibility, for example. Those pardon attorneys sort through about 10,000 for every 4-year presidential term, make recommendations to the president, and the president can either accept or reject.
But presidents can bypass this process entirely, which also bypasses application guidelines, like one that states convicts are only eligible 5 years after the end of their sentence.
Those aren't constitutional requirements. Those are Justice Department requirements. And forgive me if I'm a little cynical about the Justice Department. I'm not going to the same fox who locked me up saying, can you open the chicken coop door?
While not all pardons that bypass the typical process are controversial, presidents from both sides of the aisle have issued controversial pardons this way, some that left a lasting mark on their presidencies.
Typically, presidents get in trouble when they don't follow any sort of Justice Department process.
Alex Conant is a Republican strategist who worked for Marco Rubio.
When a president uses a pardon to explicitly benefit a political donor or friend, something that your average citizen wouldn't be considered for, that rubs people the wrong way.
Trump issued a number of pardons this way during his first term.
Did the pardon of Sheriff Joseph Arpaio go through the pardon attorney office?
I don't believe it did.
And President Joe Biden recently issued a broad pardon of his son Hunter for tax evasion and lying about drug use. Biden had previously said,
"Have you ruled out a pardon for your son?"
Yes. Nobody likes paying taxes, and you shouldn't get a pass if you're a president's son. And I think Biden's pardons help the J6 case.
I think the fact that Biden has so aggressively used his pardon powers in the final months of his presidency clearly makes it easier for Trump.
I disagree. I think they're trying to tie this back to Biden, but I think Trump was going to do this whether or not Biden pardoned Hunter. This is not a defense of Joe Biden, okay? Trump just does not care. And anyone that tries to make it seem like Trump cares about what the Democrats are doing is so silly. If anything, this is a great opportunity for him to say, oh, you guys are hypocritical for criticizing me for doing this. Sure. Like, it's just giving him more ammunition, but he was going to do this regardless. Okay? Anyone that thinks that Trump wasn't going to pardon these, like if Hunter If Hunter Biden was not pardoned by Joe Biden, do you really think Donald Trump was not going to pardon the January 6ers? Really? Because if you believe that, I got a brace to sell you, okay? Ridiculous. He never cared and he never will care. He will use the Democratic Party's actions to message, certainly. How much? Yeah, nice bridge. It is a nice bridge, yes.
To similarly use the pardon powers as he assumes the presidency. If for no other reason, Republicans will be able to point back at what Biden did and to say Trump is no worse than Biden.
But for Trump, the potential ramifications of January 6th pardons are difficult to predict.
We've never had an event like January 6th, so I think pardoning the people that were part of it would be unprecedented by nature.
This is a groundbreaking concept of pardoning people who violently stormed the Capitol to try and wrest power from a legitimate government and hand it to the loser of an election.
A pardon kind of, this may not be the word, but it excuses that behavior, or it says it's okay. So what is to stop them from doing something like that again?
And it's unclear what kind of pushback Trump will receive within Washington.
I think members of Congress have a very different perspective on January 6th than Donald Trump because a lot of them were there. They remember what happened that day, and some of them are scarred by it.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think the Republicans that were very upset that they were fearful for their lives very quickly have turned around and decided, no, these are our guys. We like them, actually. Sorry, we were wrong. I mean, look at Josh Hawley. Josh Hawley's a great example. He was running around like a headless chicken on January 6th. Ask him what he thinks about the J6ers now.
And so I don't think that they're going to be cheering Donald Trump's pardons, but they're
what the hell was this? What?
scarred by it. And so I don't think that they're.
What is this? Did they have these like gas masks on because they were worried that they were going to do like a chemical attack or something? What? I don't remember seeing this photo at all. That's crazy. That's for CRBN attacks? It was because tear gas was used in the rotunda? No, the Capitol Police were going to tear gas the building. Yeah,
They're going
they
to
did.
be
They did
cheering
use tear gas.
Donald Trump's pardons, but they also aren't in a position to fight it.
But those J6 warriors, they were warriors, but they were really more than anything else. They're victims of what happened.
One of the questions I have is whether there will be a blanket pardon, an amnesty pardon, or whether there will be selective pardons based on perceived loyalty.
My dad doesn't believe that 4 cops off themselves after J6 because of the trauma. I mean, that part is like, I get why you wouldn't believe that. That's like I don't know what he thinks happened instead. Does he think that the government killed them or something? Because that's kind of funny. The government went in and assassinated these cops to make an argument, to make it seem like it was more consequential. Why would cops ever kill themselves? They do. They do all the time. What do you mean?
Say it will be a large portion of them. You know, they did a very, and it'll be very early on.
Joe Biggs risked his life for this country and was injured, awarded a Purple Heart, and he lost his pension for participating in a riot. That's just wrong.
I mean, this has been 4 years consuming of my life. I wish I was still working at the U.S. Capitol. I wish I was still there, and we didn't have to live that ugly day that happened. But now it is a part of our history. It's not going away. I think it's important to not let people rewrite what did and did not happen that day.
The next chapter will be written when Donald Trump takes the oath of office again and decides which January 6th participants will benefit from the president's extraordinary power.
Whenever you pardon somebody who has been convicted of hurting law enforcement, whether it's the January 6th case or anything else. I think that is going to be politically more difficult to explain.
Wait, hold on. So, but getting back to it, like I said, I highly urge you guys to read the ProPublica article that we were talking about beforehand about the guy who just like randomly chose to infiltrate the 3%ers and even rose up the ranks of the 3%ers. And I think that it is a thought-provoking piece that is alarming and perhaps shows what is yet to come, especially considering that these groups are getting emboldened by the Trump regime and will probably be more active in their participation as the disorganized brown shirts that will push for Trump's agenda. Trump's NSC advisor, there will be a cross-governmental effort to combat radicalization where U.S. government will look at mosques, individuals, universities, professors, you name it, that pose a threat to the U.S. and are radicalizing individuals to harm the U.S. Okay, when I hear stuff like this, I do worry that I might go to jail. I will admit. Because they're not talking about white supremacist acts of terror. They're talking about anyone and everyone that is even remotely critical of Israel, for example. Anyone and everyone that goes, hey, hold on now. What is this, what is this argument? Like, we should be hunting down Muslims? I feel like that's a bridge too far. Nope. So that does spark a little bit of fear in my heart. But
now we have new.
Let's move on to the suspect's timeline in the deadly New Orleans terror attack.
Details on the terror attack